and I'm just kind of guessing, but I am checking all sides, and then I'm going to go back to squishing down on the inside and the outside. Obviously, I hope it's obvious, it looks really rough right now. And that's okay, because as you get a little drier and a little taller, we're going to go back and refine the outside using this flexible scraper to smooth the outside. See that big pot up there on top of the shelves there? I didn't make that. It's been here forever, as far as I know, at least 10 years. I want your pots to be smoother than that. You know, that's a pretty nicely done coil pot, but I want yours to be even smoother. If we look at all those pots that we used as examples, historical examples, I mean, this probably wasn't thrown on a potter's wheel. Might have been. But a good coil pot is going to be just as smooth and even as that. You can't really tell. I mean, there are small signs if you look really closely that you can tell, but it's not that obvious whether it's thrown on the wheel or not. Like I say, a lot of cultures never developed the wheel, including our own native southwestern American Native Americans. They never used, I mean, some of the younger Indians probably do now, but most of them never had the tradition of the potter's wheel, and their work is gorgeous and beautiful and very symmetrical and very smooth, and it's just not at all obvious that it wasn't made on a wheel. So this is basically the process. Like I say, if yours has a very strong angle and mine doesn't, but if it does, you probably can't go much higher than 3 coils before you need to start drying it out. My clay is fairly dry too, so the less water that's in the clay, probably the longer you can build before you have to start drying it out. When I'm getting at least 3 coils up here. I'll keep working on this a little bit. But I'm getting at least 3 coils because I want to show you a few other things before I turn you loose and let you get started. As you may have noticed, I'm not paying that close attention to my pattern. The main thing I'm looking for is that it's not angling out further than my pattern is actually going. Okay, at this point, I've got 3 coils joined on. It's very rough looking. I can take a few minutes and start to smooth it together. I'm using my thumb on the inside. Well, I use it on the outside too. The thumb is a really good smoothing tool. But anytime I push on it, I'm sort of supporting it with my other hand. I'm definitely not doing this. As soon as you get all your fingers inside your pot, it's going to get really, really wide and floppy. So it may feel like this is the control thing, but don't do that. You just want a finger or just a few fingers on the inside, and then I'm going to work a little harder on smoothing the outside as well. It's getting smoother, but it's just a process. And again, as I keep mentioning, you know, having success in this class has everything to do with understanding how wet or dry the clay should be. I can take this tool right now and smooth that outside, but it's mostly just going to stick to the tool. This doesn't work very well when the clay is very wet. So I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do this later on when it's quite a bit drier. So you need to sort of figure out the clay sticking to my tool, and it's not obviously making much difference when I was rubbing along there and smoothing it. So that's where I need to wait a little bit. A couple of other things I want to point out, and then I'll let you get started. At this point, you can see my pattern fits pretty well at the bottom, not very well higher up. So now I'm going to very carefully and very gently start to shape it, start to squeeze it outward a little bit. I'm using my thumbs and I'm just gently kind of pushing it out just a little bit and stretching it. I don't want to stretch it too much. I'd much rather it be a little too narrow, but just a little bit of tweaking like that has gotten this to fit a little bit better. One important caution among many I have to be very careful, and this is the biggest danger in using this banding wheel to work on. If you're not careful, you can tilt your pattern back without even realizing you're doing it. So you're fitting the profile to the profile of your pot instead of fitting the pot to the profile of the pattern. Does that make sense? If you lean it backwards, you might not even realize you're doing it because you're not working on a hard surface. You're working down on the table. It's a lot harder to lean this backward. But since this is up in the air, you could lean it back and you could be building it way, way wider than you're supposed to be building it, just because you're not paying attention to keeping your pattern level. So be sure that you do that. If this thing is within probably a half an inch at the end, you've done a really good job. So don't worry too much if you're a little bit off on your pattern. So I'm just going to keep building up, and like I say, as you get up toward the top, it's going to go faster because you're going to be better at it, and there isn't going to be as much weight pulling it down, and you can get your hand in it better. You're just going to know more about this. I will probably in a day or two stop and do a little bit more to show you about smoothing the surface, refining the surface a little bit more. But that's basically it. What else do I want to say? Oh yeah, one other thing. When you're putting this away, wrap it all up. You can keep it on the paper towel if you want, or you can get a new one. But wrap it up really carefully in plastic. Then the next day, the next time you start out, you probably want to start by scoring the next coil before you continue. Or if it just feels like it's a little dry, this is actually a little bit dry here. But if it's been sitting out for a while and it feels like it's pretty dry, score the next coil on with the scoring tool and water before you keep going, and that will make sure that you've got a good joint every single time. Any questions about any of that? I'm sure some things will come up as you're working, and if it's something that seems to be pertinent to everybody, then I'll go ahead and I'll stop everyone and share that with you. And I will add a little bit more to this so that if you want to watch me work, or if you have any questions, you can ask me. But that's basically it. So you need to make a pattern first, and then you need to get started.